This rulemaking hearing is called to order. My name is Troy Bryant. I serve as Associate General Counsel in the Department of Commerce and Insurance, Office of Legal Counsel, and today I represent the department's Burial Services Program. Would the agency representatives who are present please introduce themselves for the record?
Reed Witcher, Assistant Commissioner, Regulatory Boards.
Robert Gribble, Executive Director, Burial Services.
Today is Thursday, April 30th, 2026. This rulemaking hearing is taking place pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4-5-204 in Conference Room 1B, Davy Crockett Tower, 500 James Robertson Parkway, Nashville, Tennessee, and is available by electronic means via WebEx, where the link for access is located on the program's website, www.tn.gov/commerce/regboards/funeral/meetings.com. The purpose of this rulemaking hearing is to solicit comments on rule amendments to the rules and regulations of the Burial Services Retrospective Rule Review. The proposed rules make several administrative updates to the Burial Service Program and are clerical in nature. These updates include the removal of outdated links or URLs, general cleanup for both the CPIU annual averages and civil penalty layouts, removal of outdated or inapplicable fees and paper size requirements. Likewise, the rule also updates pre-need to comply with a recent statutory change requiring that funds received from pre-need to be deposited within 15 days rather than 30. The rule also updates language, updated the civil penalty floor of pre-need from $25 to $250, as well as a general cleanup of the civil penalty layout. A rule is defined as an agency statement of general applicability that implements or prescribes law or policy or describes the procedures or practice requirements of the agency. Proposed rules are filed with the Office of the Secretary of State, notice is given to the public for comment, and a rulemaking hearing is held. Upon conclusion of the hearing and adoption of the proposed rules, the rules are forwarded to the Attorney General's office for review of legality. If approved, they are filed with the Secretary of State, which is responsible for publication, and the Government Operations Committee of the General Assembly. The rules must stay in the Secretary of State's office for 90 days, then end of which time will be the effective date. Please listen carefully. Those members of the public wishing to speak and appearing in person should first place their name on the sign-in sheet on the table behind me. Those members of the public wishing to speak and appearing via WebEx should place their name in the chat box. Oral comments will only be accepted by those who have written their names on the sign-in sheet and typed their names in the chat box. Is there anyone that desires to offer oral comment but has not yet written their name on the sign-in sheet or typed their name in the chat box? Seeing that there appear to be none, you will find a redline copy of the rule amendments addressed in today's rulemaking hearing. For those attending on WebEx, you will find a link in the chat box to the redline copies of the rule amendments. For those appearing in person, you will find copies of those redline documents on the table behind me as well. The notice of rulemaking hearing included the entire text of the proposed rules and were published to the Tennessee Administrative Register website on March 9th, 2026. Mr. Gribble, what additional notice was given to the affected individuals or groups?
Information for the time and location of this hearing was placed on the program's website. A notification was sent to all people who had signed up in the department's system on March the 10th, 2026. They were interested in receiving updates from Burial Services. And also on March 10, 2026, I sent an email to the Executive Director for the Cemetery Association of Tennessee, informing her to feel free to distribute this notice of the rulemaking hearing to her association members or other interested parties.
Thank you, Mr. Gribble. As the agency hears public comment on the proposed rules, I, as moderator, reserve the right to limit such comments if they become repetitive. Please limit your comments accordingly. I will now summarize the substance of the proposed rules into the record. Rule 0780-05-09-.031, Bureau of Labor Statistics CPIU Annual Average. Paragraph 1 is amended by deleting reference to URL links and a table of annual percentage change data from 1980 through 2006, and is replaced with language indicating that this information is available on both the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the program's website each year. Rule 0780-05-09-.05 fees is amended by deleting reference to the LexisNexis Tennessee Funeral Law Packet and removing its associated fee. Rule 0780-05-09-.14, Community Cemeteries, is amended by deleting the requirement that a written request be submitted in, quote, typewritten form on 8.5-inch paper, end quote. Rule 0780-05-09-.24, Trustee Civil Penalties, is amended by deleting language referencing specific statutory violations and substituting with easier to understand language regarding the civil penalty range of statutory or rule violations. Rule 0780-05-09-.25 Civil Penalties is amended by deleting language referencing specific statutory violations and substituting with easier to understand language regarding the civil penalty ranges of statutory or rule violations. Rule 0780-05-10-.09 Deposit of Funds is amended by deleting the language, quote, 30, end quote, and replacing with, quote, 15, end quote, in order to comport with a statutory change. The rule is also amended by deleting outdated authority and adding updated statutory authority. Rule 0780-05-10-.10 Investment of Trust Funds is amended by deleting the word men and replacing with the word persons, as well as deleting outdated authority and adding updated statutory authority. Rule 0780-05-10-.16 Civil Penalties is amended by deleting language referencing specific statutory violations and substituting with easier to understand language regarding the civil penalty ranges of statutory or rule violations, increasing the civil penalty floor from $25 to $250, deleting outdated authority, and adding updated statutory authority. Mr. Gribble, were any written comments received by the program for the rule amendments that were not forwarded to me prior to today's hearing?
No, sir.
And I received no written comments via email prior to this hearing. Now I will solicit comments from individuals present at today's meeting, either in person or via WebEx. Ms. Bohannon, have there been any online participants who wish to make oral comment?
No.
And are there anyone present today in person who would wish to make comment? And seeing that there are none, this now concludes the comment period for this rulemaking package. Lastly, there are several measures I will need to read into the record as required by TCA Section 4-5-222. First, I will read the hearing rule language as amended. Rule 0780-05-09-.031, Bureau of Labor Statistics, CPIU, annual average. Paragraph 1 is amended by deleting the text http://stats.bls.gov/CPI. The following tables contain the annual average and percentage changes and annual averages for computation of consumer price index adjustments to the installation of memorial care fees, as well as the annual percentage change chart for years 1980 through 2006, and adding language so that as amended, paragraph 1 shall read, the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPIU annual averages can be accessed at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. The updated computation will also be posted to the program's website each year, end quote. Rule 078-5-09-.05 fees is amended by deleting, quote, LexisNexis, Tennessee Funeral Laws, $20, end quote. Rule 0780-05-09-.14 Community Cemeteries is amended by deleting the language, quote, in typewritten form on 8.5-inch paper, end quote. Rule 0780-05-09-.24 Trustee Civil Penalties is amended by deleting reference to the violation and penalty chart from Title 46, that lists each statutory citation and penalties of, quote, not more than 10,000 nor less than 1,000, end quote, and instead adding language stating that each violation may be assessed, quote, in the amount of $1,000 to $10,000, end quote. Rule 0780-05-09-.25, civil penalties, is amended by deleting reference to the violation and penalty chart from Title 46 that lists each statutory violation and penalties of, quote, not more than $1,000 nor less than $500, end quote, and instead adding language stating that each violation may be assessed, quote, in the amount of $500 to $1,000, end quote. Rule 0780-05-10-.09, deposit of funds, is amended by deleting, quote, 30, end quote, and replacing with, quote, 15, end quote. The rule is further amended by deleting reference to 62-5-405A and B in statutory authority and replacing it with 62-5-407 and 62-5-413. Rule 0780-05-10-.10, investment of trust funds, is amended by deleting the word men and replacing it with persons. The rule is further amended by deleting reference to 62-5-405A and B in statutory authority and replacing it with 62-5-407 and 62-5-413. Rule 0780-05-10-.16, civil penalties, is amended by deleting reference to the violation and penalty, penalty chart from Title 62, Section 5, Part 4, that lists each statutory citation and penalties of, quote, not more than $1,000 nor less than $25, and instead adding language stating that each violation may be assessed, quote, in the amount of $250 to $1,000, end quote. The rule is further amended by deleting reference to 62-5-405A, B, and E, and replacing it with 62-5-413. Next, I will read the regulatory flexibility addendum. Pursuant to TCA sections 4-5-401 through 4-5-404, prior to initiating the rulemaking process, all agencies shall conduct a review of whether a proposed rule or rules affect small businesses. Prompt 1 is the type or types of small businesses and an identification and estimate of the number of small businesses subject to the rule being proposed that would bear the cost of or directly benefit from the rule being proposed. The response is a good number of cemeteries and funeral establishments would be considered small businesses. However, these businesses will not bear any cost relating to the proposed rules. Small businesses may actually have a slight benefit insofar as eliminating a requirement for community cemetery exemption application and benefit from the increased clarity of the listed rules resulting from rule promulgation. Prompt 2, the projected reporting, record keeping, and other administrative costs required for compliance with the rule being proposed, including the type of professional skills necessary for preparation of the report or record. Response, these are not anticipated. There is not anticipated to be any additional reporting, record keeping, or other administrative costs associated with these proposed rules. If anything, administrative costs may be slightly lowered with the elimination of the availability of the LexisNexis materials that are rarely, if ever, purchased by licensees. Prompt 3, a statement of the probable effect on impacted small businesses and consumers. Response, it is unlikely that the proposed rules will have any impact on small businesses or consumers. Most of the rules are administrative in nature and look to update language, conciseness, and clarity across the rules. Perhaps the only impact on small businesses is that it will be easier for cemeteries to apply for community cemetery exemptions, with one requirement of the application having been eliminated. Prompt 4, a description of any less burdensome, less intrusive, or less costly alternative methods of achieving the purpose and objectives of the rule being proposed that may exist, and to what extent the alternative means might be less burdensome to small businesses. Response, the department knows of no less restrictive or burdensome means than through the promulgation of these rules as currently proposed. Prompt 5, a comparison of the rule being proposed with any federal or state counterparts. Response, there are no federal or state counterparts that mirror or resemble these rules. Prompt 6, analysis of the effect of the possible exemption of small businesses from all or any part of the requirements contained in the rules being proposed. Response. As most of the rules are administrative in nature, there are no applicable exemptions for small businesses, and the rules do not directly impact small businesses. Furthermore, some of the changes make applications easier for all licensees, small businesses included. As such, small businesses would not be exempt from these changes. I will now read the impact on local government statement pursuant to TCA Section 4-5-228. Response. The department foresees no impact on any local government. Lastly, I will read the answers to the questions required by the Joint Government Operations Committee. All agencies, upon filing a rule, must also submit the following pursuant to TCA Section 4-5-226, paragraph I-1. A brief summary of the rule and a description of all relevant changes and previous regulations effectuated by such rule. Response. The rule makes several administrative updates to the burial services program, including removal of outdated links or URLs, a general cleanup for both the CPIU annual averages and civil penalty layouts, removal of outdated or inapplicable fees and paper size requirements. Likewise, the rule also updates pre-need to comply with a recent statutory change requiring that funds received from the pre-need to be deposited within 15 days rather than 30. The rule also updates language, updated the civil penalty floor of pre-need from $25 to $250, as well as a general cleanup of the civil penalty layout. B, a citation to and brief description of any federal law or regulation or any state law or regulation mandating promulgation of such rule or establishing guidelines relevant thereto. Response. There are no federal laws or regulations that require the promulgation of these rules. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4-5-213, each department is required to conduct a retrospective rule review for each program that promulgates rules. This rulemaking package is being promulgated by the Burial Services Program pursuant to this requirement. C, identification of persons, organizations, corporations, or governmental entities most directly affected by this rule, and whether those persons, organizations, corporations, or governmental entities urge adoption or rejection of this rule. Response. The rule amendments affect current and future licensees. Proponents of the rule amendments include current and future licensees, as the amendment positively impacts those within the industry. As most of the rule amendments are clerical in nature, the program does not foresee a segment of opponents to the amendments. D, identification of any opinions of the Attorney General and reporter or any judicial ruling that directly relates to the rule or the necessity to promulgate the rule. Response. There are no known opinions of the Attorney General and reporter or any judicial ruling that directly relates to the rule or the necessity to promulgate the rule. E, an estimate of the probable increase or decrease in state and local government revenues and expenditures, if any, resulting from the promulgation of this rule, and assumptions and reasonings upon which the estimate is based. An agency shall not state that the fiscal impact is minimal if the fiscal impact is more than 2% of the agency's annual budget or $500,000, whichever is less. Response. The department does not anticipate that expenditures will be impacted, nor will there be any fiscal impact from these rules, as they are primarily clerical in nature and neither cost additional funds nor raise additional revenue. F, identification of the appropriate agency representative or representatives possessing substantial knowledge and understanding of the rule. Response. It would be myself, Troy Bryant, Associate General Counsel, Tennessee Burial Services Section, Robert Gribble, Executive Director, Tennessee Burial Services Section, and Reed Witcher, Assistant Commissioner for Regulatory Boards. G, identification of the appropriate agency representative or representatives who will explain the rule at a scheduled meeting of the committees. It would be myself, Troy Bryant, Robert Gribble, and Reed Witcher. H, office address, telephone number, and email address of the agency representative or representatives who will explain the rule at a scheduled meeting of the committees. Response, the contact information for Troy Bryant, Robert Gribble, and Reed Witcher is listed. I, any additional information relevant to the rule proposed for continuation that the committee requests. Response, there is no additional information. That concludes this rulemaking hearing. Following this hearing, the rules will be put on a rulemaking filing form SS-7039, submitted to the Governor's Office for final review, and then submitted to the Attorney General's Office for review and approval. Once the Attorney General's signature is obtained, These are then filed with the Secretary of State and generally become effective 90 days from the date of filing after receiving a positive recommendation from the Joint Government Operations Committee. Thank you all for being here today.